By the age of 35, Roland Hussey Macy had a resume that looked like a map of disaster. He had been a whaler, a gold prospector, and a stockbroker. He had opened and shuttered 6 different retail businesses, leaving a trail of insolvency from Massachusetts to the California frontier. The emotional toll was crushing. After his second failure in Boston, he opened his accounting ledger and penned a visceral final entry. "I have worked 2 years for nothing. Damn, 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 damn." That specific brand of despair, the fear that you're falling behind while everyone else speeds ahead, is something many people feel today. When you've lost everything 6 times over, failure stops being a setback and starts feeling like your entire identity. But Macy didn't disappear into those ledgers. He eventually moved to New York and founded what would become the largest department store in the world, a retail empire that today generates billions in annual revenue. He utilized his failures as raw data. His eventual wealth was a direct result of the lessons learned from those 6 consecutive bankruptcies. He used his losses to isolate the exact variables required to build a business that wouldn't break. His first lessons in risk came from the sea. At 15, Macy spent 4 years on a whaling ship, a high-stakes environment of brutal labor and global trade. It was during this voyage that he received a red, 5-pointed star tattoo on his hand, a tribute to the North Star that guided sailors through fog and treacherous water. In 1850, he tried to mine the miners by opening a supply store in a California boomtown. But mining camps were notoriously unstable. When the local gold deposits didn't materialize, the entire population vanished overnight, and Macy's 4th business collapsed in just 2 months. He suffered similar fates across New England. A needle and thread shop in Boston lacked the scale to compete with established merchants, and a large emporium in Haverhill failed because there simply weren't enough residents in the town to support his inventory levels. Instead of capitulating, Macy began to treat these disasters like a scientific experiment. He used each bankruptcy to identify the friction points that killed his liquidity, gradually refining a retail philosophy that could withstand market volatility. In 1858, at age 36, Macy turned to New York City. He realized that to support a high-volume, low-margin business, he needed the massive demographic density of Manhattan. He set up shop on 14th Street, a location other merchants considered unlucky because several previous businesses had failed there. He immediately addressed the trust issues that plagued 19th-century retail. Most stores relied on haggling, where clerks sized up a customer's wealth before setting a price. Macy instituted a strict one-price policy and a money-back guarantee, ensuring that every customer, regardless of background, paid the same transparent amount. Next, he addressed the issue that had destroyed his previous shops: debt. He enforced an absolute cash-only policy for both buying and selling. By refusing to extend credit to customers, he protected his store from the risk of uncollectible tabs. This diagram shows the shift in logic. Most retailers had capital locked up in accounts receivable, leaving them vulnerable. Macy's cash-only system ensured every sale resulted in immediate liquidity. This daily influx of hard currency allowed him to rapidly purchase fresh inventory, keeping shelves full and prices lower. Macy also pioneered experiential retail to draw in those crowds. He used illuminated window displays to attract window shoppers and introduced the first in-store Santa Claus in 1862. He even used odd pricing, like $9.95, so that customers would walk away with the psychological satisfaction of receiving change. By solving these specific friction points, Macy moved past the typical problems of a small shop and re-engineered the way retailers handle cash flow and consumer trust. Part of that engineering involved breaking the social norms of the Gilded Age. In 1860, Macy hired Margaret Getchell, a former teacher from Nantucket. Recognizing her mathematical precision and work ethic, he promoted her to store superintendent by 1866. This was a strategic move. Macy understood that women were his primary customers. By placing a woman in charge of management, he ensured the store's selection and layout were designed by someone who actually understood the target demographics' needs. Getchell was an operational savant. She expanded the store's offerings into homeware and jewelry, installed a soda fountain to increase foot traffic, and pioneered early mail order operations that allowed people to shop from home, an incredibly innovative practice for the 1860s. Macy's decision to empower female leadership provided a direct operational advantage over his rivals. By utilizing Getchell's insights, he ensured the store's evolution was guided by the demographic responsible for the vast majority of its sales, pushing annual revenues toward the $1 million mark. The ultimate test of this system came in 1873. A severe financial panic hit the United States, triggering bank failures and a multi-year depression. Traditional businesses that had extended too much credit to their customers suddenly found themselves with no cash and no way to survive. While his rivals went bankrupt, Macy remained stable. He carried zero bad debt because of his 15-year insistence on a cash-only policy. His earlier failures had taught him to prioritize liquidity above all else, creating a buffer that the panic of 1873 couldn't easily pierce. He weaponized that cash. While other merchants were folding, Macy used his hard currency to buy up their distressed inventory at steep discounts, passing those savings onto a customer base that was more desperate for bargains than ever. Macy left behind an estate valued at roughly $50 million in today's currency, but his most significant legacy was his operational framework. He had built a system capable of generating massive cash flow even when the rest of the economy faltered. Because the underlying blueprint was so sound, the company didn't just survive its founder, it was able to scale globally. After Macy's death in 1877, new leadership took his principles and expanded them into a cultural phenomenon. Missionary leadership arrived in the form of the Strauss brothers, Isidore and Nathan. They had originally operated a small concession in the basement, but by 1896, they acquired full ownership of the brand. In 1902, the Strauss family moved the store uptown to Herald Square. They built a massive 2.2 million square foot architectural marvel that would eventually become known as the world's largest store. Under their leadership, the store moved beyond retail into the broader American cultural fabric. In 1924, employees staged the first Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, a public spectacle that linked the brand to one of the country's most significant holiday traditions. Macy's trajectory took him from an $11 opening day to a multi-million-dollar estate. The man who once sat in a dark room cursing his wasted years eventually left behind the fundamental blueprints for the modern department store. It serves as a reminder that historic success is often the final, hard-won iteration of a long series of failures.